Hey, it's Colby with Colby's Photo. So I got a chance recently from Westcott to get their new L60B video light, and I decided while I had it, I was going to test it against the Amaran 60XS, their newest mini light as well. So I currently have a 100X and a 100D from Amaran. I really like the lights, but they are pretty big, so I wanted to get something a little smaller, more condensed, that it would be easier for me to bring on shoots and that would still give me plenty of power. So I reached out to Westcott and they loaned this to me for a little bit to test it during a shoot that I have this weekend. And I borrowed this from another buddy to see if I could test it against his and really give a good comparison. I haven't seen anything else out yet that compares these two lights, and I think that they are head-to-head contenders on price, performance, size, and everything. But they do have a lot of differences that I want to go over. So yeah, let's start in with the size differences. Obviously, you're going to know that this is a lot smaller than any other standard light, a 300D, a 100D, or like 100X, like what I'm using right here to light this scene, or any of those other like larger scale professional quality lighting. These are meant to be smaller. These are meant to be run and gun. These are meant to be quick. Something that you're just going to pop out of the bag, set up, and be able to run and gun with real fast. But obviously that comes with a decrease in the amount of power. So I'm going to start off just kind of showing you a comparison between the size differences and some of the other features that these lights offer, and then we'll move into power output, and then from there we will do like a full kind of breakdown at the end of everything that we are looking at. So with the main differences in size, you're going to notice that the Amaran is a block. It is a square, it's a little chunk block, where the Westcott is a cylinder. So this is actually just a little bit larger than like a standard pop can. This is pretty small too. You can see that they're really not that different in terms of size. When you remove their reflectors, there is going to be a difference there as well. The Westcott is honestly really small. But then you move on to the next point, which is the way that they attach the lights to a stand. So the Amaran has just a typical, what I would consider a typical umbrella bracket. However, it is metal, it is really, really nice. The twist knobs on it are very sturdy. Overall, I like it very well, and it just screws into the bottom. So you have one, I believe it's 1/4-20 screw on the bottom of this, and you could use really anything you want, attach it to just about anything you want. The Westcott, however, does not have that option, but it does have this really nice swivel and move adjustment for the, it's like a very typical movie set bracket. I'm not really sure what they're called, but it is nice. It is great to use, and it does feel very robust, very robust. I can't fault either of them, even though they're completely different designs, and this is just going to be something that you may like, you may not like, you may choose one over the other. If I had to say one thing, I do think you have a little bit more versatility with the Amaran, where with this, I thought you could unscrew this bracket and just use any 1/4-20 or maybe, you know, a 3/8, but you can't. It is a screw that's coming out of it that you attach it to. So that isn't the greatest, but at the same time, this is a really nice design. But with that, you have no other options if you want to keep this small. So you have to have this bracket on it at all times, where you can take the bracket off of the Amaran and use it in different capacities. So I don't know, that's kind of a win to a win. They're both pretty good in their own respects. It just depends on what suits your needs better. So one of the big differences we can see here is the diode size. The diode size on the Amaran is a lot smaller than the Westcott, which I'm sure is going to help the Westcott a lot in terms of being able to have a better light spread. It also has a lot of silver around the outside, around where the adapters mount, where the Amaran does not. It's just black. It has actually fins in there for fans to be able to suck air through. So I do think this is definitely going to help the Westcott out a lot. We'll see that later in the output and how the light spread is, but I can tell you right now that I think this design, the size of this diode is definitely going to help it out a lot. The other thing while we're here is the mounts. Obviously you can see that the Aputure is using a full-size Bowens mount. They do cut off all the extra edges to keep it small, which I think is really unique. The other thing is that the Westcott is using a mini Bowens mount. They do include an adapter for their switch lighting, but that kind of like forces you into that. You have to buy Westcott lighting products in order to use the switch, and I haven't seen too many mini Bowens modifiers out, so I don't really know if that's a pro or a con. The full-size Bowens is definitely a pro for the Amaran, but I do like the way that it keeps this very, very small for the Westcott. Moving around to the other side, you can see that there's a V-mount holding slot on the Amaran, which is a really nice touch. Honestly, I do love that a lot. One big button back here for power, being able to make adjustments, power switch, and then your plug type. So before I move on with the plug types, I'm going to talk about this. Here's the bracket. Let me get back here a little bit. Here's the bracket for the Westcott. It is really a nice design. I like this giant handle on here, being able to like move and twist it around. But like I had said a minute ago, let me see if I can pull this out real fast. You are limited in terms of there is no other, there's just a screw on here. So there is no other way for you to actually mount anything else to this, which, I don't know, I was kind of hoping that I would be able to mount other things to it. I do like their mounting system, but you know, at times for packing, this can be large. You know, this now increases the length of the overall unit. So it is something to consider, but again, it is, if you are gonna use this all the time, it is sturdy, it is great, it is wonderful. On the back here, you got a nice big screen, so we can see here if we are, turn on the unit, you can see the screen is just really big. It's got two big knobs, easy to use. You can turn on Bluetooth on and off, you have effects and whatnot. I'm not really going to utilize the effects ever myself, I just need nice, clean, constant light. You can also change your Kelvin output, so I can turn this on, get it brighter than my actual light here. So you can change your Kelvin output right like that, there you go. So now you can see. So that is nice and handy there too. So with the Amaran, let me turn that on real fast. It has a screen on the side over here. Now this is a nice big bright screen as well. It's pretty hard to see on the camera, but you can make all your adjustments, turning the light down. It also does have a nice stepping, so if you push it in, it steps up 60, 80, 100, etc. And then on top of that, you can push in, twist, and that allows you to adjust your Kelvin. So let's see where we're at here. Adjust your Kelvin down, and I believe that steps as well. Let me see if I can turn the power back up. There we go. Let me step the power back up a little bit. There we go. All right, so now if I switch back, you can see how it's stepping different colors. So it is pretty nice. Honestly, I have no complaints about either of their systems, the way that you view them, the way that you use them. I will say though, the Amaran, I didn't read the instructions. I don't know if there is a way that you can easily jump back and forth between the Kelvin and the power. As far as I know, you push the button in and twist it. I don't know, I'll have to read on that, so don't hate me too much for messing that up if I did. But while we're here, we're going to talk about the plugs. So this is actually a really cool thing that I like. Westcott is just a typical barrel plug, just a typical barrel plug that you're going to see anywhere, and it fits in nice, secure, nothing wrong with it, and I thought it was really good. And then I tried the Amaran one, and the Amaran one is actually a screw-in plug. It's the same barrel type, but it screws in so it's locked in and secure. I like that a lot. That's a nice selling feature for me, but again, you know, if you're not going to be running and gunning too much with this, if it's going to be kind of stationary, it's not a problem. There is nothing wrong with that. This is just a little extra touch. So back to the reflectors. Each one comes with its own reflector. The Amaran comes with a mini reflector. Let me get my face out of here. It comes with a mini Bowens mount. So it is still full-size Bowens mount, but it is a mini reflector. I don't know how I feel about it. It's okay. It goes on, snaps into position. It's very small. It keeps the overall footprint of the light very small. So I can't hate it for that. But I did try the output, whatnot with it, and it doesn't create very good lighting in my opinion. So we're going to look at that in a minute. But let's also take a look at the Westcott. Full-size Bowens on here, mini Bowens on here. So again, you have that mini Bowens. This is a really, really nice reflector. The Amaran's is plastic, and I'm really not a fan, but the Westcott is really nice. It's large. So you have that not going for it, I guess, that it's larger, but at the same time, I think it's going to make a significantly better light output. And if I can find out how to get it in, there we go. So like I said, it does make the Westcott a lot bigger for packing, but I think this is going to be a lot nicer. So I think you're really going to come down to a compromise of, do you want the most compact light that you can get with a lot of versatility, or do you want something that's going to create better light? So you're going to have to kind of ride that, but again, we'll see later on how we feel about those. The one thing too is that, I'll do this. A little bit of wiggle, but then I'll come over here so you can hear it on the mic. Westcott has a significant more like play in that, and I'm not sure if that's the mount or if that's just the reflector itself, but the Bowens mount on the Amaran is a lot tighter, crisper. So if weight is a huge factor in your kit, which I typically like to run as small as humanly possible, as minimal amount of gear as I need, but making sure that it's going to be quality, the Westcott, completely like this, with the reflector and the bracket, I weighed them each with the reflector and the bracket, 777 grams, and that is 1 pound, 1 ounce. The Amaran is heavier at 1,060 grams, and that is 2 pounds, 5 ounces, I believe. So that's a weight difference. However, I don't think that it's going to make that big of a difference in terms of in your kit, because they're both still pretty light. The main issue again is going to be how they fold up. So the Westcott, I'm going to start with that. The Westcott is good and bad. You can still hear that rattling too. The Westcott is good and bad. So this now is in what I would consider the smallest format. You could probably try and angle this down, and this is the smallest format. It's still fairly large. It's about the same size as my Amaran 100s without the reflector on them, which is sizable. I'm trying to get rid of an Amaran 100 to switch to something smaller. So that is something for me to consider. The nice thing too though is if you really wanted, you can flip this back around, boom, just like that. Take off your reflector, and then it kind of sits inside of it. That does make it more compact, so you do have some options there. But onto the Amaran. This, if you just take off the mounting bracket on the bottom, which like I said, is just a 1/4-20 threads on, so I'll show that to the camera really quick too. Easy. So if that's the route that you want to go, this can get very, very compact. And then, you know, you can just kind of hold this with it. But if you're definitely going to keep it attached to the bracket, it is going to make the size odd, weird. So again, something to consider. I'm not really going to say either of them are a win or a lose. It just depends on what fits best in your bag and your kit and works best for you. So something else you may want to consider is the length of the cord for each of these. The Westcott is 15 feet long approximately, and the Amaran is almost 25. So that's a pro and a con in and of itself. If you really need the extra length for the cord, the Amaran obviously has it by a long shot. But that's more weight, that's more size in your kit. So if you're just running with batteries, doesn't make a difference whatsoever. However, if you do need actual AC power, you are going to be able to tell the difference when you're packing all that extra cord. So one of the other main features and huge selling points for myself on these was the ability to be able to use them with Sony MPF batteries. I have a couple of them. They're extremely versatile, and everyone knows that for filming purposes, they're everywhere, and they're one of the best batteries that you can get. So for me, being able to have a video light that I could run off of that while using a monitor and anything else at the same time was awesome for me. But there is a big difference between these two lights and the way that they utilize it. The one is, the Amaran comes equipped with a MPF adapter, and it hooks right onto that V-mount spot, which is already just a nice touch, and plugs right on in. So for me, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I like that. Uses two batteries, full power, everything like that. The Westcott, however, is different. It does not come with the adapter. They utilize it in a battery grip handle, which admittedly, it is pretty nice. I like the fact that you're able to use this on location, have your assistant hold stuff, but for myself, a lot of times I am very run and gun. I'm doing things by myself. I use light stands. So I just want the ability to use the batteries, not necessarily to have the grip and whatnot. But it is still nice, and if people use that, it's good for them. So the difference here though is instead of just being able to attach it onto the side, you attach the entire light to it. And like I said, it's now utilized as a battery grip handle. So tighten it on, and you can still mount it to a light stand. So for me, it does still work for the purpose that I needed it for. So I do like that, and then just like the Amaran, plug it right on in, and you're set and ready to go. So they do both have the ability to use the MPF batteries, just slightly different implementations for each of them, and overall they work well, can both do full power, and it solves the problem that I have. This is an additional accessory though, and we'll talk about that later when we get to the price. So one other thing that I did want to showcase here was the fan noise difference, because that is something, if you're in a very quiet environment, the fan noise can make a difference to what you're hearing. So I'm going to showcase each of these together. The Westcott is definitely quieter by a little bit, but also a cleaner fan noise. It's not, the Amaran is a little more whiny than the Westcott, which is a nice thing for me. Right now, I'm at 1/60th of a second at f10, 200 ISO shooting in S-Log3 on my Sony a7 IV. I don't have a light meter to test these. Obviously, you can see what their lux outputs are on their website, but I just want to see what it looks like through the camera to give a kind of a real-world perspective on what these lights will do. Here's also a view of the Westcott without the included reflector, and all these tests are done at 5500K on each unit with the lights at 100%. We're going to put the reflector on again just to kind of see how that makes a change in the light output. So again, I think the Westcott does look significantly cleaner, but let's check out and see what the Amaran is like as well. So as you can see, the fall off on the edges of the Amaran are a little bit wider than the Westcott. However, I think it's a little harsher. And as you can see, there is an obvious hot spot right in the very middle that the Westcott does not have. I don't personally like this at all, and I think that this is maybe not a good reflector design, but with the large Bowens mount, you do have a lot of different options, so I am going to try some other things that I have as well, just to kind of give you an idea and perspective. However, the initial mini reflector that they include honestly isn't it for me. This is with a full-size Bowens mount for my Amaran 100X, and it does look a little bit cleaner, slightly less of a hot spot, but again, we're leading back to that LED diode is just too small and creates a really bad hot spot. So we'll see how this looks through an umbrella in later tests, but right now, not super convinced by the output compared to the Westcott. Honestly, it looks a lot cleaner bare bulb than anything. So one thing you're immediately going to notice with the Westcott is that the light fall off is considerably better. There isn't a major hot spot in the middle, and this comes back into play when talking about that LED diode in the center. It's a lot larger. I think it gives a much better spread, and overall I think the light quality from the Westcott is significantly better. So that concludes our tests. These are both great lights with great output, and we're going to be discussing what I think about the differences, but I want to show what each of these look like shooting through a modifier right now. I'm going to be using the Rapid Box Switch Octa S that I got along with the Westcott for my testing. I'm just going to showcase it on myself as a subject so you guys can get a feeling for that while I talk about the price differences. So that is where the biggest discrepancy is between these two lights. The Westcott is $269.99 without the MPF battery grip adapter. The Amaran is $199, which is a considerable difference, especially considering it includes the MPF adapter, which for somebody like myself is a necessity. That's the only reason I want these lights, is to be able to use them with battery power and not be tied down and being able to run and gun on location. if you want to include that with the Westcott, it's an additional $50 to purchase that. And that puts it over $300, which honestly could be a real make or break. That's a $110 difference, $120 difference between these two lights to be able to do the exact same thing. So you're definitely paying for differences in quality. You're paying for a better body on the Westcott versus plastic, a metal body on the Westcott versus plastic on the Amaran. You're paying for better packaging that you can utilize with the Westcott. It has a nice carrying case. I personally won't be utilizing that, so it doesn't make a difference to me. But if you keep your things in the original cases they came in, it's a great thing to have. So I do think the light output on the Westcott is significantly better than the Aputure in terms of the look overall. The Aputure is a little bit brighter, but technically they say it's a 65 watt, not a 60 watt. So that makes sense, but I really don't think that, I think it's a negligible amount. You're not gonna be using these lights outside in direct sunlight, typically. You're going to be using them indoors for shoots like what I'm doing right now, small run and gun sort of events like what I'm doing this weekend. And for that, I think either of these lights will do an exceptional job. When it comes to price, obviously that's where the biggest discrepancy is here. The Westcott is going to be $320 with the MPF battery grip, where this is $199 and includes the NPF adapter. So realistically, you just need to decide what is going to suit your needs best. Do you want a compact form in this? Do you want a compact form in this? Do you want cleaner output from a reflector, or are you just going to be using it with modifiers and it doesn't matter if you have clean output from the reflector? I think the clean output from the reflector is a nice touch, personally, and something that I will probably utilize. I don't really care for the bracket, but it is nice. I'm more of a fan of these types of brackets, so lots to kind of digest here, but I wanted to give as much information as I possibly could to help people make an informed decision on these lights, because typically a lot of the reviews I see out there are just, yeah, it's, you know, F11, it's cool, it looks good. And that's not what I want to do. I want to try and give the information that I sit down and research and look up and try and figure out, and take the time to kind of give you guys an idea of what is best for me and then what might be best for you based on my results and my testing. So hopefully you guys found this informative, hopefully it was educational, and hopefully it didn't look too bad considering I don't do very many reviews. So thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it, and hopefully, you know, I might make some other reviews at some time, so keep an eye out for them. Have a good one. Bye. What else do I want to say?